mon oncle. Ça me fait de la peine de partir. Ils ont tous été si accueillants, si sympathiques. C'est déjà fini. Le beau voyage est terminé.
Mais non, ma petite Margot, ce n'est pas terminé. Merci. Il y a encore le vol. Et je suis sûr que vous allez le trouver très intéressant.
Vous avez raison. Un premier grand voyage en avion. Ça compte. C'est vraiment un très bel avion. Je suis contente que vous ayez choisi celui-là. C'est la conclusion parfaite à ce magnifique voyage.
Alors, en somme, vous vous déclarez satisfaite?
Oh, mon oncle, chaque instant m'a ravie. Et chaque minute a été si enrichissante.
Qu'est-ce qui vous a semblé le plus intéressant?
C'est une question bien embarrassante. J'ai tout aimé. Le Mont Saint-Michel, que je n'oublierai jamais. Et l'histoire de Guillaume le Conquérant. Mais je crois que la chose la plus importante que j'ai découverte, grâce à vous, c'est que partout en France, l'histoire est présente. Et que l'histoire, c'est quelque chose de vrai, de vivant, qui donne à ce pays une grande partie de son caractère. Et Paris. Comment décrire Paris? La Tour Eiffel, l'Arc de Triomphe, les boutiques, les boulevards et les cafés connus du monde entier, mais aussi les petits coins pittoresques, les parcs, et cette ambiance à la fois si typiquement française et si cosmopolite. Paris. Un point du monde où tous les étrangers se sentent chez eux. Et ce voyage dans l'est de la France. Vous souvenez-vous, mon oncle? Les montagnes. La famille. Comment voulez-vous que je puisse choisir? Et ce voyage en Suisse. Et le midi. Mais à vrai dire, ce sont les souvenirs de la famille que je vais chérir le plus. Je les ai trouvés tellement gentils. Et en connaissant ma famille française, il m'a semblé que je comprenais un peu mieux tous les Français. Ces Français ont été avec moi si aimables, si accueillants. Qu'importe les petites différences de coutumes, d'habitude. Voyez, mon oncle, je crois que les choses importantes, celles du cœur, celles de l'âme et celles de l'esprit, français et américains, sont étrangement semblables.
Si de tout votre voyage, vous ne deviez retenir que cela, Margot, j'estimerais que nous n'avons pas perdu notre temps.
Votre attention, s'il vous plaît.
Oh, écoutez.
Le commandant Courtois et son équipage vous souhaitent la bienvenue à bord du jet Château de Chenonceau. Notre prochaine escale sera New York, que nous atteindrons dans 7 heures environ. Nous volerons à une altitude de 12 000 mètres et notre vitesse sera de 900 km à l'heure.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the AV Geeks Lunchtime Streaming Show. I'm Skip Elsheimer, and that was a something that would be shown in French language class. Souvenirs d'un voyage. I'm sure that the captioning was having a heyday trying to figure out what was being said. It's pretty funny. Anyways, yeah, we're going to try. Let's keep the comments to what we're watching and not about current events. I appreciate everybody was with me yesterday while stuff was happening. So let's just kind of keep it at that. Lots of films to watch today. Holy cow, lots of films. I've shown a couple of films about shoplifting over the last several months. Here's a Canadian view of shoplifting. Enjoy.
I was never in their life ever taken anything that didn't belong to them to stand up. Now, go ahead up. Nobody? Well, fellow thieves, let's look at this problem of theft that we call shoplifting. Shoplifting's a funny word. It's become almost socially acceptable. But under the criminal code, there's no such thing as shoplifting. It's theft. If you steal, you're a thief. Some people feel that they can get away with shoplifting because they can elude the security personnel and store employees. Like any thief, however, if arrested, force can be used to return them to the store and then turn them over to the police. Would you be willing to gamble your freedom, your reputation, risk a fine, imprisonment in jail, just for a few items that you might be able to pick up in a local retail store?
We're all, at one time or other, subject to take something that doesn't belong to us.
People don't realize at the moment how serious it is.
Shoplifting is a theft.
I'm not a psychiatrist or anything, but from my experience, as I say, which is over 20-odd years, I still say it's a fancy name for a thief.
I wish that everybody would pay for the merchandise.
Shoplifting is at its worst right now.
Shoplifting, pilfering, is on an increase, constant increase, to the point that you possibly know that in Canada there is approximately $1 million a day lost through shoplifting.
And I've apprehended a number of shoplifters, and not to my knowledge has there ever been anyone who didn't have sufficient money to pay for it.
It appears to me that a basic problem is a lack of understanding of the rights of property.
This is where the cost of items go up, because again, merchants, they have to absorb that cost somewhere, and it's passed on to the consumer.
In effect, before the law, there needs to be two things. There needs to be concealment, and there must be the absence of any effort to pay for it. Now, under these circumstances, if you took something and you concealed it, and you didn't avail yourself of the opportunity to pay for it at a closed cash register, that is theft before the courts. It needn't be outside the store that an apprehension is made.
The court has different treating a person who has been apprehended in shoplifting. The person may be found outrightly guilty, and the people should know that the person then has a criminal record which follows him through life, can cause him a great deal of difficulty, a great deal of embarrassment.
Now, John, I believe you have something belonging to the store. Would you like to hand that over, please? You mean this? Yes, that's what I mean. How much money do you have on you? Approximately, roughly.
About $15.
So you really could have paid for this, right? Any reason why you didn't? Are you sure you haven't anything else, John?
No.
Quite sure? Because I think you were observed taking some garments?
No.
You really mean that? I think you were something about garments. You sure you didn't have any garments? I thought so. Would you like to put those on the desk, please?
Regardless of the items stolen, apprehension and interrogation can cause acute embarrassment for the shoplifter who is arrested. The embarrassment extends quickly to members of the shoplifter's family, especially their husband or wife.
Yes, honey. You got arrested for what? Shop? John, I wonder if you could, I could talk to you about this later. I've got my wife on the line and, you know, that kind of thing. Where are you now? You got arrested for what? Stealing what? How many? What the hell possessed you to steal 5 pair of panties?
I didn't have any money, and I wanted them, and I saw them, and I took
What
them.
do you mean you don't have any money?
Well, I had money, but I have to buy dinner tonight, and you want steak, and I just didn't have enough money to buy those for me.
Listen, I suppose these bloody cufflinks you gave me for Christmas. Now, where'd you get them?
I bought them.
You bought them. Is there anything else you've stolen? Tell me now.
Nothing really important.
Nothing really important.
Neighborhood gossip can also add to and increase the embarrassment factor for the shoplifter.
That little dark one? Yeah. Oh, she was caught for shoplifting.
Oh,
Do you know what she did? Yes,
What?
she was convicted for shoplifting, too.
Our experience has proven that there is no real profile of a shoplifter. There is no ethnic or no social or no economic barriers or openings that seem to suggest this person shoplifts. They come from all walks of life.
Well, I think the average person is aware that the goods do belong to the store. In other words, they're aware that these goods are for sale. So that they are aware that they are stealing. So I think we have to think about what articles are being taken, what they're being taken for, and what the person's feeling is at the time when he is in the store.
Yes, did you see that?
I'd say if somebody's in a store and they see something going on or a shoplifter in action, I think it's their duty as citizens to go and make this known to either the manager or one of the staff at the store, and then let the security men take over.
The fact that a store does not catch the shoplifter does not mean the person gets away. Once identified, police can be notified and a search and arrest made at the person's home.
Mr. Mueller?
Yes.
Police officers.
We understand that you picked up some luggage this afternoon at one of the department stores. As a matter of fact, one of the employees saw you leaving the premises with the luggage in your car. Well, Mr. Mueller, we have your search warrant. I wonder if you mind us coming in and check the apartment, please?
Yeah, okay.
Now, Mr. Mueller, are there any other items that you might have stolen in the past that could be in the apartment at this time?
No.
Well, if you don't mind, Mr. Mueller, I think we're going to have a look around. Bill, would you mind having a look around, please?
Yeah, I'll just check it out.
Often, additional stolen items are picked up, and an arrest almost assuredly ends in conviction.
With us, and we're going to have to take this along as evidence, so I would suggest that if you have a phone call, a telephone, make a phone call and put on a jury.
Whether they consider the consequences of their act is another question. I think that they may not at that point think of the consequences. In other words, they are really trading their whole life, their freedom, their reputation, whether or not they have a criminal record, for an object or an article that may be worth a few cents or $1. If they had a free choice in the matter, in other words, if you really presented them with, would you trade all these things that you have in your life for something worth $1, they would say no if they were cool and could consider the thing dispassionately. But I think under the pressure and the heat of the moment, they may simply not think about the consequences and lead themselves into things that they would never normally make a cool judgment about. For example, a person may be generally depressed about a lot of things and sees something that he likes, that delights him, that he looks at, that he touches, and he gets so attracted to the article that to simply pocket pocket the article is provides him with a kind of delight.
Lisa, I understand that you are an active thief and you do steal now from retail stores, which makes you a shoplifter, and that you're willing to admit this fact in this film.
Yes, that's the truth.
How long have you been stealing from retail stores?
I'd say around 7 years.
Since you were how old?
13.
13.
Mm-hmm.
How much have you stolen during that period of time?
A few $1,000s worth of things, I guess, if you added them all up.
The excitement in it is, of course, that the person must be terribly watchful whether anyone is looking at him. At the same time, he himself must appear very casual and cool because he'll draw attention to himself. And these combination of things about being terribly alert and at the same time being very calm, exteriorly calm, produces a kind of a high excitement inside, which provides a sort of an excitement to life that he may not be having outside in his everyday world.
Does this bother you in any way? Do you feel any sort of morality about theft?
No, I have no morals. I have no feelings. I enjoy it.
These are apprehensions during the months of April and May. Here is one, a young boy, age 13. He steals something for $1.25. Another woman, aged 28. Another young lad, aged 9.
Shoplifting isn't a phenomenon that's peculiar to any particular age group or any particular type of child. They do it for thousands of reasons, I suppose. But one of the strongest reasons, I suppose, is peer group pressure. A youngster who depends very much for his security on his own age group, and he does things to belong to that group because it's important to him. You find this in children who perhaps don't have the kind of security and support at home that might be desirable.
It's the most natural thing in the world to pick up an object. We've been doing it ever since we were children. It's one of the first ways in which we got things. The only difference between that and shoplifting is the fact that when we pick up an object in the store, we're expected to pay for it. Anyone, I think, can be tempted to shoplift.
We have had cases where young people at high school level who had been charged and been convicted couldn't get into a profession that they sought later.
I'm sorry, sir, to tell you this, but under the circumstances, your son having a record, it would be very difficult for us to admit him to this academy. I appreciate your feelings in the matter.
We are sorry to say that we cannot issue you a visa to enter our country due to your existing criminal record, and therefore are turning down your application.
And the prestige involved in this situation.
All right, Bill, I'll level with you. I like you. I think you'd be good for the job. But you do have this criminal record, and we just have a company policy. We can't hire you.
Our files are full of examples of children who started out as 7-year-old or 8-year-old shoplifters. And, nobody's paid any attention to them. And suddenly at 14, they're stealing cars. And that becomes a very serious thing. In other words, a pattern allowed to develop and prolonged over a long period of time is very difficult to interrupt. It's much easier dealt with in real early, So if parents can be on the watch for it, fair enough,
Most of the parents, I feel, are condoning the actions of their children because they will turn upon the investigator rather than look at the child in the true perspective that the child has committed the offense. They take a different attitude, though, once we turn the child over to the police authorities and the police take them home. Then the parents take a different view. But once the star investigator phones the parents, then they blame the investigator for catching the child instead of the offense that's been committed.
Are you accusing my daughter of stealing a chocolate bar?
Look at lady, I tell you that I think it's...
Some parents adopt a most unusual attitude toward their child's theft, blaming the store instead of the child.
It's ridiculous. My daughter's only 6
The mother,
years
however,
old.
could have taken the time to talk to the child and explain the real meaning
Here's your
of
stupid
theft
dime.
and
I'll never be
shoplifting.
back. You'll get no more of my business.
Sorry.
If parents did their job at home properly and insisted on a child, when the child gets to a point where it can do some thinking for himself or herself, recognizing the significance of property rights, explaining, in fact, the basic economics of how a store gets merchandise, how a chocolate bar happens to be in a store, and who pays for it, and what happens if the child lifts this item. Instead of dismissing it by saying, well, he's too young to understand.
Darling, it's so important for Mommy to explain to you that you've not just taken a chocolate bar from a store, but you've really stolen something that isn't yours and doesn't belong to you. Now, when you take things that don't belong to you, it doesn't matter if it's a little chocolate bar worth 10 cents or if it's $1,000, it's the same thing. It doesn't belong to you. It means that the man cannot make a profit. So it's terribly important that you really understand that it's not a simple thing to just take something that doesn't belong to you, that it's important to pay for everything that we bring home.
I don't think the merchant does the child any favors by ignoring the situation or simply taking the goods off the child and sending him home. I know they're busy and they make perhaps one attempt to notify parents, but in our town at least, most parents work, both of them, and many times I'm afraid parents have children who shoplift or who do other things that might be classed as delinquent, and they never know. I don't think this is fair because parents never then get a chance to deal with the situation until perhaps it becomes a little more serious than it might have been originally had they been allowed the privilege of supervising their kids. The other thing is that some of the children who do this, as we've mentioned, are perhaps suffering from some kind of emotional disturbance, or there is some situation at home that needs looking into, and unless we are notified or parents are notified, this seldom comes to light, so you don't really accomplish anything for the child. Sometimes, if this problem is very serious, even in these cases, you have to resort to the court, who can then add a bit of pressure to see that the children get whatever service it is they need.
Juveniles who we apprehend are treated in only one of two ways, because any other alternatives place on us an unwanted responsibility. We feel we must either call the juvenile authorities to come into the store and then take the children home to their parents, or if that doesn't seem practical because parents aren't available and perhaps the incident doesn't warrant involvement of the police, then we will call the parents and ask them to come directly to the store and take their children home with them. There's no third alternative. They either leave with the juvenile authorities or they leave with their parents.
Personally, I'd like to see a very strong educational program on shoplifting, not the techniques, mind you, but to educate the general public in all age groups that shoplifting is an indictable offense and that it could mar someone's whole lifestyle.
We feel the retailing industry has an obligation, one to both its customers and to its shareholders, to do whatever we can to prevent shoplifting and to deter theft. It's an effort that we're making to protect our merchandise that we think we have to do if we're to recognize what we consider our part in merchandising at the most reasonable cost that we can.
I wouldn't want to get caught. I'd hate to get caught.
So you, in effect, are the enemy to the store. So how does the store defeat you? How could you and shoplifters like you be defeated? What would the store have to do?
I really don't know. I guess get a really good security system in, or which costs a lot of money, or just keep an eye out.
Retailers generally feel that the only effective deterrent against shoplifting is a policy of prosecution.
When you go to a store and you buy $20 worth of groceries, those groceries today are costing you $23, about 15% higher, right across the board for all goods. That's what it's costing you. That's $20 for the groceries and $3 for the shoplifter. So the next time you see somebody stealing something, don't go, "Isn't it awful?" Report them. Because if they get away with stealing what they're taking and you don't report them, you're going to pay for it in the final analysis. That money is going to come out of your pocket. So think about that, fellow thieves.
Hi, Dad. How was your trip?
Oh, yeah. Oh, not bad, you know, just an adventure.
Nice pair of salt and pepper shakers. Where did you get them?
Oh, well, I was sort of lying around at the hotel, right?
Yeah, and, what about this towel? Hotel give you this?
Well, it was sort of in the room, you know,
Yeah, something like that lecture you gave me about shoplifting the other day. Hey, Dad?
What?
Oh, Canada. There's not any... So the first time I watched this film, I didn't realize it was Canada until they talked about the stats of Canada, Canadian shoplifting. But when you watch it a couple of times, you realize, yeah, oh yeah, that's Canada. All right, so let's watch a film. I've got over here, I have a telecine that's hooked up with a film. We watched over the last couple of weeks of Your Job films about fitting in, films about finding the right one. This one is made by somebody else. It's called The Job Interview, and it doesn't really have a title, and I think it just shows job interviews, and then you're supposed to critique. I believe the idea is that you show it to people who are potentially going to be applying for jobs to kind of give them a sense of like what did they do right, what did they do wrong. So here it is, the job interview. I should say at the beginning it's a little splicey, so the frame's going to roll a little bit, but it's all right.
May I ask, what did the service teach you? I mean, besides firing a rifle.
Well, rifle is only a small part of being in the service. Over in Nam, you've got to learn a lot more than that just to be able to survive. Over there, if you don't want to be out, you have to learn how to cover your buddy's back.
Case of survival.
I mean, you really have to know how to work with people. There are so many people dependent on you and how well you do your job that you've got to be on the ball, especially when the chips are down.
Well, that I can believe. I can answer any specific questions you have.
Could you tell me a little bit more about this job?
Well, I'd be very glad to. Is there anything in specific you know about our firm?
Just from what I read in the ad. I'm familiar with your products and the company, but...
Well, we supply automotive parts.
3/4 of the men and women coming out of the service every year will be looking for jobs. A veteran has a lot to offer an employer. For one thing, military service has been an education. Every serviceman or woman learns things every employer wants to see in the people he hires. They learn how to get with it when there's work to be done. And if you've got this, you'll probably be able to keep any job you can get. Now, how do you get that job in the first place? The idea of this film is to give you a few leads on how to handle yourself during that job interview. Of course, the interview is only one part of the story of getting a real job. There are a number of other things you've got to do, and these involve knowing where to go to get help, training, and so on.
Okay, down the records interview, it takes 10 to 15 minutes. All you have to do is just go from item 1 down to item 32, sign your discharge paper if there's nothing wrong. And after that, pass out your pay voucher, you march down the cashier and pick up your last final pay. How many questions you're going to ask down there in the records interview, I do not know. If you got so many questions, that's going to hold you long down there.
Good morning. I'm a Veterans Employment Representative from the California Employment Service. And what I've got to say is probably going to be worth your while.
As you know, the real jobs are not being handed out at the front door. You've got to work to get them. And that means learning all you can about the job market.
They'll give you your papers, including your 214, and say, okay, shove off. But you are not legally released from active duty until the date shown in item 11D. The day after that, you can file a claim. You walk in to one of that state's public employment service offices and register for work. This system is in every state, in all of the cities, and in most of the larger towns. In some states, they go under the title of Department of Labor or Commission or Labor Commission, but nevertheless, it's all part of the same system.
You can get real help in looking for work. Your best bets are the state employment agencies across the country. And they have special staffs set up to deal with the problems of jobs for XGIs. These staffs train, test, and counsel, and help find jobs for the veteran. Then, there's that job interview. The important thing to keep in mind is that once you've got your foot in the door, don't blow that job interview. While a good session with an employer doesn't guarantee the job, a bad interview guarantees you won't get it. That's why you have to stay on your toes.
You've just got to stick to it.
Yes, but, you know, there's one thing I'd like to point out. This job requires the handling of special equipment. You think you can do that?
Well, take the M16. We have to be able to take that apart and put it back together. Not only that, we have to be able to do it in the dark or while we're being shot at.
Oh, I see what you mean.
On one patrol over in our comm man was hit, and I had to take over for him. I had to operate his radio for about 3 weeks. It broke down a couple of times, and I had to fix it. Not only that, but our squad leader was hit as well, and I had to take care of the food and ammunition for the rest of our team.
Well, I'd say that's learning under pressure, perhaps the hard way, though, huh?
Yes, there's a lot to be learned out in the field. You just have to stick to it.
Well, I think if you can do these kind of things, you can learn our equipment, you can do the job. So why don't we give it a try? You report here Monday morning at 9, and we'll talk further when you come.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, you're welcome now.
You've just seen an ex-combat soldier get himself a job with a good interview.
Margaret, McMillan, the young man who was just in, he's joining us on Monday morning. Give him the packet of company benefits. All right? Thank you.
Take a few minutes and think about your own abilities and how to sell them to an employer.
What have you been doing with yourself since you got out of the service?
Just been trying to get myself together.
Uh-huh. Why do you want this job?
Because I understand that you pray pretty well.
Well, yes, we do. But there's a reason. You see, it's not an ordinary job with a set procedure. It's more of a thinking man's job. You have deadlines to meet, pressures. You have to be quick. You have to think on your feet. You may have to invent a whole new solution to a problem within an hour to meet a deadline. You think you can make that kind of pressure? Think you can meet it?
Maybe. I don't want to make you any promises.
I see. Well, maybe the job isn't for you.
Well, it's hard to tell.
Yes, yes. I tell you what, why don't you get in touch with us in about a week or so. We'll let you know either way. Thank you for coming in. It's nice to meet you.
We've just seen an unenthusiastic approach by a vet who might have otherwise qualified for the job. Here's a more positive approach.
So, you haven't had a job in quite some time. Why is that?
Well, I just was taking some time to decide what I wanted to do with myself. So I've been looking around, talking to people, and just trying to decide exactly what I want to do.
I see. Of course, you realize this isn't a job like, well, most jobs. It doesn't have a set procedure. It's, well, it's a pressure job. A job where you have to think on your feet, make decisions, meet deadlines. You may even have to invent a solution, a new solution to a job in a matter of minutes. Do you think you can work under that kind of pressure?
It sounds like NAM. Yeah, I mean, you always have to make quick decisions there, and sometimes you'd be involving your own life and the lives of other guys, too.
Yeah, that's interesting.
I mean, I've always had to decide things for myself. You know, when I was in NAM, it just intensified everything. You know, you were dealing with survival. You had to learn to take care of your hardware, your rifle, and stuff like that. Otherwise, you would be a dead man.
Well, what about our after-work training program?
Sure. If it goes with the job, I want to take it.
Good. Good. Let me tell you a little more about our plant, about our firm, and what you would be entitled to when you start working for us. Why did you leave your last job? Excuse me. Hello. No, I'm busy with an interview now. Call me back later. Bye-bye. I'm sorry. Why did you leave your last job?
Those people, man, all they did was bug me from the time I punched in until the time I left. Every day.
And I see here where you were a dropout in school.
Yeah.
Would you like to tell me what happened?
Oh, man, I don't want to talk about that.
Oh, I see. All right. See my secretary in the outer office. She'll notify you if anything opens up. We have nothing at present for you.
This is the way it could have gone.
Why did you give up your last job?
Well, it sure wasn't easy. The job was exactly the kind of job I wanted. Same kind of job you're offering here, but it seems I had 3 different bosses and they were always giving me 3 different orders.
Yeah, well, that can be a problem.
Yeah, it sure can. But that was before I went into the Army. Since then, I can handle those kind of problems much easier.
I see here where you dropped out of school. Can you tell me a little bit about that experience?
Yeah. Well, school wasn't too important to me. All I wanted was a fast car and a fast buck. But after I got into service and I saw the other guys moving up, that was a turning point for me. After that, every chance I got, I tried to learn everything I could. I even earned some stripes.
That's interesting.
I understand you have a training program here.
Yes, we do. Are you interested in it?
Yeah.
Good. I think we can use you right away.
Oh, wow, good.
As you saw, the preceding interview was much more positive. The employer seemed interested in hiring this veteran, who was not ashamed to discuss his past shortcomings and was able to express a sincere desire to learn the trade. He was able to let the employer know that he was on the case when it came to learning something new and moving up. Here's another example of a veteran who's on the case.
Well, what sort of salary did you have in mind for the job?
Well, I think that mainly depends on how good a job I do and how well the company is doing. If there is an opening for promotion, though, I'd certainly like a crack at it. You know, actually, one of the things that I was a bug on while I was in the service was top performance. That's how I got my medals. So there's no problem there.
Well, listen, top performance is, look, after all, the name of the game. Now, I've got something in mind.
Would it be all right if I called you in a couple of days in case you get word?
Sure, why don't you do that? Either I'll call you in a few days, or if I don't, would you be sure to call me?
Fine.
Okay?
Thank you, yes.
You bet. Bye now.
This veteran tells about his experience with his local state employment agency.
So consequently, when I went to apply for a job, it wasn't that crowded. I think there was only about 7 or 8 people. So I got there early in the morning, and by the time they got to me, it wasn't too much longer afterwards. They have a gentleman there who sits and talks to you, and before anything is done, he sits and just talks to you and interviews you. I guess they want to see what kind of a person you are, or what kind of experience you've had in communicating with people. And then they go into your qualifications as far as applicable to any job that you want. They ask you what you would like to do. In my particular case, I had never had any kind of business training, but when I took the test for the math, I did pretty good on it. So he suggested that I try a bank, and he sent me to Bankers Trust, and I got the job eventually.
When a veteran goes after a job, he must know what he has going for him. A sense of responsibility, reliability, an ability to work well with others, instant experience, and the ability to function well under pressure. In the service, he's had to plan ahead and meet emergencies. These are all valuable assets to talk about to any employer. The employer has to learn about them in that first job interview. And here's a final reminder. To get it all together in one bag, the veteran's best place for complete job counseling, training, and placement is the local office of the State Employment Service.
So that was not the film I thought it was, although it was very similar. Essentially, I have another film, well, I have a couple of films, called The Job Interview. 3 men, job interview, 3 women. Sorry, that was my printer. And it shows actual people being interviewed. And I thought that's what this was, but this was actually that job interview, and it was made for the Department of Labor. But it's similar. The one thing that I was hoping to see with the job interview film, and I'll try to dig it up and show it at some point, is I don't know if there are actual job interviews that were captured on camera and they got releases, or if it's actors. Like, I feel like what we saw were actors. I could be wrong, but I feel like they were, coached because they provided a bad interview and then a good interview. The other series I have doesn't actually have a good interview or a bad interview. It just has interviews, and you're supposed to go through and pick and choose what they did right and what they did wrong, etc. Fascinating nonetheless. I got this film from North Carolina's Department of Economic Security. I got several of those films, including The Hardest Working Dollar, a bunch of films about trying to find jobs and about unemployment and all that stuff. So it's really kind of great. What we got? I think we're going to watch a film about static electricity. This one talks about science, also has some great, it's just beautiful footage. So here's static electricity.
This is static electricity. And this is static electricity. Here's another example of static electricity. Static electricity can be a nuisance. Static sparks can cause fires in homes as well as in industry. Yes, static electricity is a phenomenon of nature that has been with us longer than the man. Since ancient times, scientists have studied static and conducted experiments to find out its characteristics and its hazards. Now, let's see a few of the laboratory experiments presented in the Bureau of Mines demonstrated lecture on static electricity. First, meet Mr. G.M. Kintz and his co-worker, Mr. H.F. Brown, both of the Bureau of Mines. Static can be generated by rubbing two materials together, but rubbing is not always necessary. When the metal disc is placed on the plastic plate and lifted, it takes a charge with it and leaves an opposite charge on the plate. Static electricity is generated by the contact and separation of materials. Static electricity generated as the metal disc is lifted from the plastic plate flashes the fluorescent tube. It takes about 10 volts of static electricity per inch to excite a cold fluorescent tube. To understand how static sparks can cause fires and explosions, we must know how fire is created. Fire must have a fuel. Substances such as gasoline, benzene, kerosene, and even wood, however, will not ignite. To use them as fuel, they must first be in the form of vapor or gas. But vapor or gas alone won't burn. We must add air. We know that it is the oxygen in the air that supports combustion. The third leg of our fire triangle is heat. In addition, these ingredients must be mixed according to a very definite recipe. We must have a definite ratio between fuel and air. This ratio is known as flammable limits. For example, acetylene will burn or explode only if its concentration is between 2.5% and 81% by volume in normal air. Each flammable gas has its own flammable limits. The flammable limits of natural gas are between 5% and 15%. Any percentage greater or less in normal air will not propagate flame. As we talk about static, we are talking about the heat leg of our fire triangle. We normally think of heat as the heat given off by a flame or generated by an electric filament. In discussing static electricity, however, we should think of heat in terms of concentrated energy, electrical energy, often so small that you will not see the spark. Physicists tell us that this amount of energy is approximately what a fly would expend in walking a few inches up a wall. This tiny amount of energy expended in the form of an electrostatic spark will ignite flammable mixtures, such as the one in the explosion tubes you have already seen. This tube is first flushed with air or oxygen and then a small amount of flammable fluid is added. Now let's look at another Bureau of Mines experiment. It demonstrates how static can be generated in one area and then induced on insulated objects in another area, where a spark can cause disaster. This Van de Graaff machine consists of a belt running over two plastic pulleys. The contact with and separation of the belt from the pulleys generates static electricity on the takeoff side. The metal ball accumulates the charge. To illustrate induced charges, Mr. Brown moves the explosion tube toward the machine generating static. Charges induced onto the ball terminals of the explosion tube caused the ignition. To cause a spark to jump that distance, the machine had to generate thousands of volts. If this relatively small ball accumulates a charge of that magnitude, think what tremendous charges accumulate on thunderclouds. Consider this example of an accident probably caused by an induced charge. A workman was filling a tank truck with a low vapor pressure flammable liquid, while small thunderclouds were passing overhead. Sparks occurred and ignited the vapors at the hatch. When engineers investigated, they found that the man, the tank truck, and the fill pipe were properly bonded and grounded. They discovered, however, that rust, paint, and other materials insulated the hatch cover from the truck. It is believed that as the thunderclouds moved away from the area, the induced charges on the man, the truck, and the fill pipe could leave and follow the clouds. The induced charge on the hatch cover could not. When there was enough difference of potential between the hatch cover and the tank truck, a spark occurred. Other examples are accidents in geophysical shooting and blasting operations. Many premature detonations have been caused by static charges induced onto electric blasting lines by thunderclouds. When the wires of an electric detonator are thrown into the air or strung out, they act as an antenna and collect charges from thunderclouds. If it is not a static resistant detonator, a spark can occur in the detonator, causing a premature ignition, even though the wires are short-circuited. The detonator is fired by a spark that occurs between the bridge wire and the copper shell of the detonator. Let's see exactly how one of these premature detonations takes place. Mr. Brown places a live detonator in a heavy steel jacket. The lead wires are short-circuited. A sufficient charge will be induced in the line to fire the detonator when the lead wires are thrown near the static machine. When there are thunderclouds in the vicinity, blasting operations should be stopped. Because of their safety features, only static-resistant detonators should be used where there may be hazards of induced charges. Static is always generated by contact and separation, so liquids falling through space and breaking into droplets generate static. The best way to prevent falling liquids from generating static electricity is to extend the fill pipe to near the bottom of the tank and get subsurface discharge. Lubricating oils and most hydrocarbons in pure or semi-pure state are poor conductors of electricity. But what about liquids that are good conductors? Mercury is one of the very best liquid conductors. Let's see whether falling mercury will generate static. This mercury dropper consists of two funnels. Small holes in the plug at the end of the stem of the top funnel allow the mercury to spray into the bottom funnel. This wire connects the mercury in the dropper to the explosion tube. It makes no difference whether the liquid is conductive or not. When any liquid falls through space and breaks into droplets, static is generated and can accumulate on any nearby insulated conductive object. To prevent this hazardous accumulation, bonding is the answer. Now, as mercury flows through the funnels, no explosion occurs. Even water, by forming into droplets and falling through space, can generate a static charge. In fact, the greatest manifestation of static in nature, lightning, is generated in this way. This Kelvin water dropper consists of 4 empty cans with the tops and bottoms removed. There is a screen in each bottom can to collect the static. When water flows out of these nozzles and falls in droplets through the cans, sufficient static is generated to ignite the explosion tube. This small amount of falling water is all that is needed to generate enough static to explode a flammable mixture. Many other liquids are just as effective. Mr. Kintz will show us what happened in an ammonia manufacturing plant. A water solution was flowing into the top of a large tank containing a flammable hydrogen mixture. An explosion occurred inside the tank. It is believed that the water solution flowing into the top of the tank created the static that caused the ignition. Many people are under the false impression that humidity stops the generation of static. Just remember that our strongest manifestation of static occurs during thunderstorms, when we often have our highest relative humidity. High humidity does not stop the generation of static, but it can prevent the accumulation of static. Mother Nature does with humidity what should be done mechanically in industry. With a microscopic film of moisture, she bonds all surfaces together electrically, so there is no difference in potential. When two objects are bonded together, there can be no difference in potential and no spark can occur. Before you pour flammable liquids or permit them to flow from one container to another, be sure that the containers are electrically bonded, unless it's a closed system. A workman in a refinery was doing exactly what Mr. Brown is now doing, except the 5-gallon can and the metal funnel were not bonded together. Static generated by the falling liquid ignited the vapor. Because it is not possible to bond glass containers electrically, the liquid should flow in a smooth stream. Do not hold the container in the air and let the liquid break into droplets as it falls. In dry weather, when a man walks while wearing heavy woolen or synthetic clothing, the layers of clothing separating from each other may cause a heavy charge to accumulate on his body. You've seen liquids fall through space and generate static. Now, how about solids? The two pieces of tubing held by Mr. Brown are insulated from each other by a plastic ring. When air at low pressure is blown through the tubing, nothing happens. A clean, dry gas at low pressure does not generate static, because there are no solid or liquid particles present to contact and separate. When a tiny amount of dust is added to the air, a sufficient charge is generated to cause ignition. Moisture, dust particles, rust, and other impurities can contaminate natural gas and make it a static generator. This equipment demonstrates how fires have started while sulfur was being loaded into a ship through chutes or piping. Using this equipment, Mr. Kintz and Mr. Brown have tested flour, rust, sulfur, coal, grain, catalyst, and many other materials. They all generate static. If a high-pressure gas line ruptures, many people think that mechanical sparks or heat of breakage ignite the gas. But these conclusions are often doubtful. The probability is that the escaping high-pressure gas creates dust clouds, and the dust particles generate a static charge which ignites the gas. To purge the oil compartment of a barge, carbon dioxide was turned into it. The carbon dioxide snow striking an insulated conductive object created a static spark. which ignited the vapors. As a truck travels along the highway, it accumulates a charge in two ways, from the dust in the air contacting and separating from the truck, and from the tires contacting and separating from the pavement. This miniature truck has been given a static charge. Here's what can happen when it backs up to a tank which is leaking flammable vapors. This hazard can be eliminated by the proper bonding and grounding of the truck before opening the fill caps. With everything bonded together, there is no difference in potential. Now, when the truck approaches the tank, no spark can occur. Drag chains, belts, or wire on trucks or planes are seldom effective in removing static charges. This truck is not being grounded at all because asphalt, blacktop, and dry concrete are all insulators. Tremendous static charges can build up on a flying plane. An uncharged plane taxiing across a dry concrete or blacktop runway can accumulate a charge. Refueling crews are well aware of the hazards of static electricity. That's why they first ground the truck. Then the truck is bonded to the plane. Finally, the nozzle is bonded to the plane before opening the cap of the tank. Lightning is nature's greatest manifestation of static electricity. It is generated, of course, by contact and separation, or by rupture and separation of raindrops during violently turbulent conditions. As charged raindrops fall to Earth, they leave one charge in the cloud or atmosphere and bring an opposite charge to Earth. After enough raindrops have fallen, the difference of potential between Earth and the cloud becomes great enough to cause a stroke of lightning. Lightning can discharge from a cloud to Earth, from Earth to a cloud, or from cloud to cloud. As the cloud passes through the atmosphere, the opposite charge follows it on the Earth. When the cloud passes over a tall building or other high objects, the gap is narrowed and a stroke may occur. Then, too, when a cloud passes over a building or structure, there is an immediate rush of charges to bring everything to the same potential as the Earth. Under certain conditions, sparks can occur between insulated objects. When oppositely charged clouds are neutralized by a lightning stroke, their earthbound charges must neutralize themselves. In so doing, they may form an arc between insulated objects or between insulated objects and the Earth. This arcing is one of the reasons why bonding should be used between all machinery, pumps, pipelines, and other conductive insulated materials. This building might represent a gasoline transfer pump house or a chemical process building where flammable material is being vented. The discharge ball can represent a thundercloud. When lightning strikes, we have a fire. Some gases lower the dielectric strength of the air, and very often the structure venting fumes will be the one hit. Mr. Brown sets the cloud at a distance where the lightning will not jump. When gas is released, the lightning strikes the building by following the weakened path created by the gas and causes ignition. The protection for this building is lightning rods. Now, as we bring the cloud right down over the building, there is no stroke of lightning. The points bleed off the static charge faster than it can accumulate. To be effective, lightning rods must be properly designed. There must be several air terminals. The terminals must be high enough, properly spaced, and connected to a properly installed ground conductor of the right size. Improperly maintained lightning rods may become hazards. Broken downcomers or discontinuity anywhere can cause secondary sparks. Remember, when a stroke of lightning occurs, millions of volts and thousands of amperes are released in milliseconds. When a pipeline that might release flammable materials is opened, a stray current, static discharge, or lightning discharge might cause a spark and ignition. A bonding cable should be put across the gap to bond the two sections of the pipeline together. You have seen that static electricity is generated by the contact and separation of materials. You have seen how a tiny amount of energy expended in the form of an electrostatic spark can ignite a flammable mixture. You have seen how static can be generated in one area and then induced into another area. How falling liquids generate static, whether they are conductive or not. How even water can generate static. How falling or flowing solids can generate a sufficient charge to cause an ignition. And how static charges can be carried from one place to another on an object or a person. Remember that the dangers of static can be minimized by filling tanks from the bottom up to get subsurface discharge, by properly bonding and grounding, and by proper use of lightning rods. Static is not something to be afraid of. Knowledge of the hazards of static electricity and knowing how to control them will help prevent accidents.
I gotta say that film was awesome. You know, there was lots of cautionary tales there. But the fact that they're constantly causing things to blow up or catch fire with static charges is really great. Also, man, if I could figure out a way to get those curtains, those lightning bolt curtains, that would be something that I could maybe put back here. Those are great, especially for shower curtains. They would be awesome for shower curtains. Yeah, that was very exciting. You know, big fan of science demonstrations that result in explosions or fire. And then all the cautionary tales of somebody, you know, fueling up and then things explode because they didn't ground things properly. Big fan. Anyways, thank you so much for joining us today. It's a nice break. I always enjoy showing you new films and kind of pulling ourselves out of the headline reading that's going on. You know, give yourself some time. It's fatiguing. It's also can be very frustrating and unfulfilling. So reach out to your friends, your family, say hi. If you've got somebody in your life who you're bubbling with, hug them. I watched some 70s movies and a stupid action movie, Hobbs and Shaw, last night, instead of watching the news, and it was wonderfully distracting. Anyways, I will be back tomorrow. Tomorrow's Friday, right? Wow, we just burned through this week. But if you like what you saw, please hit like. It doesn't cost anything to hit like in YouTube or in Facebook or whatever you're watching on. You can also buy us coffee. Very much am drinking a lot of coffee as for some reason just seems like the thing to do. And then also you can go to avgeeks.com and see other things that we've done, we've digitized. I've been uploading a lot of Cornet films that we've been scanning, and also like ones we've been scanning over the last couple of years that just have not made it online yet, so I'm constantly working on that. Everybody have a good rest of your day, and we will see you soon. You know, I've been trying to find a better thing in a film can. I haven't found it yet, but I'm just going to fall back on this. The film can gives us advice, sometimes beyond what actually the film is in it. And this one is please rewind and love each other, smiley face. Everybody have a good rest of your day, and we will see you soon.